Golden Horn, best of the best. Treve well beaten. But is it as simple as that? Phil Smith is our chief handicapper of the BHA. And Phil, first of all, you thought the 3-year-olds would come out on top. You were right. Was that a satisfying result for you?
Well, it's satisfying primarily because we always like to see our top-rated horse win, and obviously Golden Horn was our top-rated horse going in, and clearly he won the race. Just to go back to your point, there were 3 3-year-olds in the first 5, so that was really not much of a surprise either. But the sort of slightly irritating aspect of the race was the pace, because we really rather hoped and thought that Shahar would set probably a stronger pace than that. So very wary of being critical of jockeys, because it may be that Shahar couldn't or wouldn't go much faster than that. But I think we would have expected the pace in an arc to have been a bit quicker, especially on that particular type of ground.
Especially if your name is a pacemaker.
And you're named as a pacemaker. So the big problem, I think, for Treve at this point is that none of those first 3, Golden Horn, Flintshire and Newbay, they're not inconvenienced in any way by that particular pace. They're all lobbing along, they're in position A, and of course they end up finishing first, second and third. And she pulled a little bit in the early part of the race. She's a little bit far back. I mean, I suppose in a perfect world you'd like it to have been 2 or 3 places further forward. But the big problem is that because of the pace that the race was run at, the front 3 aren't stopping. They're still going at their absolute maximum, and she can't use that burst of speed that she's got at the end of the race where she's going past tiring horses, and the reason is they're not tired.
So would you be more, I mean, I know you're not a man to criticise jockeys, but I can, Phil, and you can just sort of say nothing as far as that is concerned. But are we, I mean, clearly Jarnet's had a shocker, but perhaps Gregory Benoist has had more of a shocker on the pacemaker than Jarnet.
Well, I think the big problem for Jarnet is that we saw it in the last sort of 10 or 12 strides there, that she's pulling quite strongly. And, you know, obviously that's telling you that the pace isn't fast enough for her at this point in time. Has Benoist had a shocker? I think that's possibly harsh. I think the job of pacemakers is a difficult one. Jockeys aren't used to it. The top jockeys are just not used to doing things like that. You know, there's only one decent pacemaker jockey that I've seen in my last 10, 15 years, and that's Ian Mongan on Bullet Train for Frankel, who was absolutely brilliant at it. So they've not got a good record. But you can see now, she's finishing, but the other 3 are absolutely not stopping. And I suspect if the race was run in a different way, possibly on softer ground, you'd have had a different result. I'm not saying that Golden Horn would have been beaten, because I still think he's the best horse, and I hope he won. But I'm disappointed that Treve couldn't get ahead of Flintshire and Newbay.
Yeah, because we kind of know that Treve is a 2 lengths better horse than Flintshire, don't we?
She's definitely better than Flintshire.
Yeah. OK, Golden Horn was rated what going into the arc?
He was rated 130.
And what was his performance?
128. He didn't have to. He didn't actually have to perform to that level to win the race. And again, he wasn't probably able to do so, again, because of the pace of the race. I suspect that he would have won more convincingly had the pace been faster. You know, the one thing we found out about Golden Horn, and it was very interesting listening earlier in the year, is he going to stay a mile and a half? He stays a mile and a half. Any horse that wins the Derby and wins the Arc is a true mile and a half horse. But you know, I know that Connections were concerned earlier in the season that whether he really would truly stay a mile and a half. And then, for example, he wasn't entered in the Arc originally because of those doubts. But so just to finish up, just to show how slowly run a race it was, is I've done something that the handicapping team would only rarely do in a race of this distance, is all the little fractions that you've got between 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, I've called them a pound. And you wouldn't normally do that, because I was concerned that horses, for example, who finished 8th, like Siljan Saga, would have been getting too high a performance figure had I used the normal pounds per length. So we've exaggerated the pounds per length and called those little fractions a pound and a pound and a pound. Silverware would be another example of a horse that goes into the race, you know, on 114. It's finished 10th. Why do I suddenly want that on 117 or 118? You know, we wouldn't normally be putting up a horse finishing 10th, £4. So I've sort of split those figures a little bit more creatively, you might call it, than I would do normally.
If there was one horse in the rut that looked unlucky, Found appeared to me to be the horse. I mean, not much was said about it afterwards, because obviously in a race like this, most people just concentrate on the winners. But if this had been a maiden, you'd have been saying, crikey, did you see the run of Found? I mean, he got mullered. He was cruising, turning and going better than Golden Horn. He got mullered and then ran on through beaten horses. Always hard with closing horses from off the pace who've never effectively been in a race to know if they had been in a race what they would have found. But, pardon the pun, Found looked like a horse who was loving a mile and a half, didn't she?
Well, absolutely. You know, she's underperformed from what we thought that she was probably capable of doing. And again, I don't think the pace of the race helped her. Because, again, some of the horses that she's trying to weave her way through are not really stopping. And it's much easier for jockeys to weave their way through horses that are stopping than horses that are still going, because the gaps don't appear quite so easily. So, yes, Found, she's beaten 5 lengths in the end. I mean, she's probably the equivalent, I mean, I would have thought that she's going to finish 5th or 6th rather than 9th. Had she got a clear run. And again, inconvenienced by the way the race is run. And that's something that, you know, handicappers all over the world have to take into consideration when we're looking at races. You know, the pace of the race. You're much happier with a truly run race in terms of the satisfaction of the result and the certainty of your figures in a truly run race. And that clearly was not a truly run race. I mean, you know, you've got horses, you know, quite a long way back there have run, you know, apparently their career best.
Phil, there'll be people saying, hold on, you're saying it's not a truly run race, but on official times it was fast by 3.27 seconds. Would you just purely put that down to the fact that the conditions were much faster than they usually are for an arc?
Conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're officially only good. It's not as if they were firm.
Sure, but how often is it actually good in the arc? It's more often good to soft at best in the arc. And if you look at some of the performances in the other races, you know, there was I think there was a track record over the 2 days,
right.
And other races were run at a much better pace.
So they don't have to remeasure. Best you don't comment about that, Phil. So Golden Horn Flincher. Let's have a look at the official ratings now then, the Longines World's Best Racehorse ranking. These are the updated ones. And what I feel about these ratings, they tell us straight away, Phil, is that you are a great advocate that Golden Horn has to stay in training as a 4-year-old to be ever classed as one of the world's greats. And on those ratings, whatever he does at the Breeders' Cup in the turf, he's not going to go above American Pharaoh, is he?
Why not?
Well, because he's only got Flincher and Postponed to run against.
Well, if he beats Flincher by 5 lengths, he goes above.
But you're not going to judge him on one performance on a Lasix-loving track in America, are you?
Well, first of all, Golden Horn in the arc, 128. Do I know he's better than that? Absolutely. I definitely know he's better than that. His performance in the Derby, the first 3 in the Derby, they look really good. If we can be confident that Flincher runs his race in the turf, and he's a considerable distance away from the...
So if Golden Horn beats Flincher 5 lengths in the arc...
And Flincher wins, beats the 3rd and 4th.
He's likely to elevate that rating. Really?
Absolutely.
Just on that one run?
I still believe that Golden Horn is potentially better than 130. My problem is I can't get him there. And we have that situation year in, year out. We've probably got it at the moment with Glen Eagles to an extent. I think that Glen Eagles is probably better than 122, but you can't prove it.
Well, he could if he beat American Pharaoh in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Well, then, let's see if that happens.
It's not going to happen, is it?
Let's see if that happens.
No, but what's your feeling? You can have opinions.
Well, I have an opinion, and obviously American Pharaoh goes into the race as top-rated.
We even know that. We know all the ratings, Phil.
But I go back
do you think Coolmore would put a horse against their Coolmore horse?
This is what I think. I think that American Pharaoh is clearly the best dirt horse in the world. And as I go back to, we always like to see our top-rated horse wins because we want to be proved correct.
But do you think Glen Eagles will take him on?
I honestly don't know.
Your gut feeling?
No comment.
Everyone's got opinions.
I've no opinion. I just want to see Glen Eagles run on Saturday first.
Against Solo. Price has drifted all morning. If the Betfair exchange is any guide, Found's not running Saturday.
Glen Eagles?
Glen Eagles not running on Saturday. Yeah. And I found my horse, incidentally.
Yep.
The horse that we're going to be absolutely fascinated by later in the programme is David John, who... Phil's BHA handicappers managed to rate on a mark of 90 penultimate start. having run 112 lengths, 91 lengths, 84 lengths, 186 lengths behind the winner. After it was beaten 186 lengths, it was given a mark of 90. I'll be very interested to know, and Phil, please don't tell me, oh, we went back to the bumper form at Exeter. I'd be very interested to know how Phil managed to come up with a mark of 90 for a horse beaten 186 lengths on its previous start. You'll get your chance in a minute after this.